Hey, I'm Zac.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching In Depth
On Now You Know. Brought to you by BetterRoutePlanner.com. Use our link in the show notes below to get a 30-day free trial.
and we're sponsored by BigBattery.com with the best battery prices in the USA, guaranteed. If you've got something you need to power from homes to cars, RVs to boats, and much more, BigBattery.com has you covered, offering the newest battery tech. Use the code NOWYOUKNOW to save 5% off your purchase today at BigBattery.com. And you can help support our channel by heading over to ecoware.us, where you're going to find new designs every week, like Fake Gas
and Mars Shot and many, many more. And you don't just have to get t-shirts. We also have pillows and towels and bikinis, everything that you could possibly imagine. And we carbon offset the production, the shipping, and the life cycle of every product. And we plant a tree for every order. And we help cap a well for every order. So it's very, very carbon negative.
All right, so Jesse and I were lucky enough to have one of our viewers and now a new patron, Andrew, let us borrow his brand new Ford Mach-E First Edition.
Yeah, Andrew was so gracious. He hadn't even had a chance to get it ceramic coated yet. It only had about 1,400 miles on the odometer. Andrew barely had it for about a week, and then we swooped in and took away his baby for the day.
Well, we're so lucky to have Andrew here today, and he's letting us drive his Ford Mach-E that you just got. This is your new baby.
That's my new baby.
Tell me about it. Are you enjoying it?
I love it. It's absolutely awesome. My biggest thing is, so I had a Model S, 2014 Model S, and a 2019 Model 3 Performance.
Okay, so you know Teslas really well.
I know Teslas. I love
so
Teslas.
This is perfect because now we're comparing kind of a driver who knows what he's talking about. So how would you compare? How does this stack up to Tesla?
Very well.
Awesome.
I would say, you know, as a very good competition. I don't think there's anything else out there right now that could even compete. Fit and finish is bar none. Is absolutely perfect. Drive is awesome. Where it comes to Tesla, I'm very honest, the charging network, they have it. There's not the network yet, but I figure that's a 2-year problem.
Gotcha. So how about navigation? How are you feeling about navigation? Because I heard from EV Dave, he wasn't glowing on the navigation, but what do you feel about it?
I absolutely love it. The Ford navigation gives me elevation. I'm a hiker, so when I go up north, I like to see where elevation I'm at. You can always find dealerships. You can always find chargers. I think I know what you're talking about because he said it didn't add the chargers. I think there's a button you have to push, but needless to say, I haven't had any issues. Mm-hmm. And then if you flip it to the Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, you've got different choices for maps in there. So I tend to run Waze, but if I need to find chargers, there's so many different options.
Now, how about Ford's version of Autopilot, or what they call what did they call it?
It's called Copilot 360.
Okay,
yeah,
Copilot
360, I think. So, we're not supposed to use it on back roads, but the Tesla did a great job. Mm-hmm. This is not as good on back roads. But get on the highway, went up to Tilton the other day, and without a problem, it just drove the whole highway the whole time. Just rested my hand on the steering wheel.
Now, I mean, because Ford claims that they can't do back roads at all, but you've experienced a little bit of back roads and it works a little bit?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
yes.
Cool. That's cool.
Yeah. One thing that I feel like Tesla does a good job with is it auto restarts if you're in traffic, and once you're stopped for a little while, you have to hit a button to actually restart it. And I think those are little things that came from the older versions of stop and go and adaptive cruise.
And then what about one pedal driving? Do you feel like this has kind of equivalent to Tesla in that sense with the regen?
It's 95% there.
Okay, so close.
It's really good. It's more aggressive and unbridled. So if you drive it unbridled, you come to that complete stop. Mm-hmm. In engaged, I definitely feel like it's a good stop. There are times I may have to stop using the brakes a little bit, but it's not bad. The one thing is if you're in one pedal driving and you step on the brakes, you're going to get like almost emergency braking.
And thank you for giving it to us with about half a battery today, because that's going to enable us to go really check it out at the charger. And
Absolutely.
Thank you for just letting us drive it today.
No,
This is going to be really exciting to check out and see like if we agree more on EV Dave's side or more of Andrew's side. I think we're going to have like a meter today that's going to go like between you two. No, but I'm really excited to check it out. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
It's the best competition that I think Tesla has right now, and I think it's just a different feel. So
awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right, so Andrew has the first edition Mach-E, which costs $58,300. It has 270 miles of range on an 88 kilowatt hour battery. It has 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds with 346 horsepower and 580 newton meters of torque. It has a top speed of 112 miles an hour, 64 cubic feet of maximum volume, which includes the front trunk. And of course, this is the first edition, so it gets the stitched leather steering wheel, the first edition scuff plates, the brushed aluminum pedals, and the red brake calipers. All right, so let's take it for a spin.
So I am lucky enough to be able to drive a Mach-E today. We're going to take it out for my first time ever. I think this might be my first time driving a Ford. So I believe we're in Unbridled mode. For the time being, I'm going to listen to what Andrew said. I'm going to switch to Whisper. No, Engage. It's got pretty great pickup, I'll be honest. So yeah, there's 3 drive modes. There's Engage, Whisper, and Unbridled. You can kind of think of this as like normal, chill, and maybe, sport or ludicrous mode. Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's pretty good pickup. Coming to a stop is pretty good. I'm obviously fine-tuned. Like, most of my stops in the Model 3 are done completely by the Model 3. So I'm used to the Model 3's, stops, which, come in feathery smooth, and you hardly, like, it's very chauffeur-style stop. We're going to have to do a couple more of these and see how the stops feel on the Ford. First impressions, pretty good. I'm definitely going to have to get used to the different layout of stuff, the binnacle. I haven't had a binnacle in forever. All right, so I'm going to take my pedal fully off, no feet. It comes in a little stiff, and then it softens it up at the end. It's fine, though. Totally fine. I'll say right off the line, it feels excellent. It feels like it's giving me a little bit more. So now that we're off of city streets, I'm going to put it into Unbridled. Okay, so now we have it in Unbridled mode, and I believe it's starting to pipe in sound. There's a bit of a rumble that we weren't getting before. And you can change this in the settings, obviously. I just haven't been in an electric car with fake rumble noise on the inside. So we're gonna see what that's like. Especially if we do any acceleration. Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's pretty good acceleration, I'm not gonna lie. And I like the regen braking. I really like the regen braking. It's nice and strong. I like my regen braking strong. So you really do get the one pedal driving. I've hardly had to touch the brake at all, which I'm used to. It feels really nice. And I'm just gonna do a little punchy punch. I don't know. I'm sorry. There's definitely a delay from when my pedal went down and we accelerated. And we're in Unbridled. That one felt a little bit better. I do not like the piped in sound. That's funny. It doesn't have much character to it. Which, I mean, I wouldn't want any more character, I suppose. But it just, I don't know. You know what? Let's just take it to 0. Good braking. It's got a good punch. That's okay. I'm very picky. I know I'm being very picky. Especially off of 0, it feels very good. But of course, once we get, I don't know, I want to say up to 30-ish miles an hour, putting more pedal makes it feel like there's not, like the car doesn't have any more to give. That doesn't mean that the acceleration is bad by any means. It's pretty good. It just gives the impression, I think, and I'm so, I am such a Tesla snob when it comes to this. I'm used to there being more until you hit the metal, so to speak. Whereas this kind of feels a little bit more like a automatic style car where, when you floor it, it might downshift, but the more pedal you give, the less it doesn't really affect anything because the throttle is already wide open. It kind of has that feel to it. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over back to engage and just kind of see how that feels, because I think what that's going to be is a little bit more rounded acceleration pattern. From talking to Andrew, it sounds like the different drive modes change how the car behaves in terms of pedal response, but only in the lower end, which is nice because it means that you're going to get faster speeds. I feel like Engage is honestly a better drive mode. It doesn't give all the power at once, so you have a little bit more precise a paintbrush, so to speak. Whereas I feel like with Unbridled, it just gave you as much power as it could about halfway through the pedal. Here you get about, I would say, 2/3 of the way through the pedal, and it feels powerful. Not too much response past that, so I think it just kind of moved the goalpost, so to speak, a little bit further. I do want to try Whisper in a minute. There is definitely a slight delay in pedal response, which is something that I notice more in a Tesla at the lower speeds. I'm talking, sub 10 miles an hour kind of speeds. There is a slight delay sometimes. This delay is a little bit more pronounced. It's not too noticeable. The one thing that I do like is the regen braking in the Ford Mach-E. The takeoff is pretty nice, I'll be honest. Oh my God, it's the Easter Bunny. Easter Bunny is just walking down the road. All right, so I'm gonna get onto a smallish highway here. We haven't really seen what it can do at speed on a highway, so we're gonna see, what that's like. The over-the-shoulder visibility is actually quite nice. On the highway, it feels pretty good. I mean, we're going mid-60s, so we're going about the speed limit. It feels fine. It still's got a little bit of body roll, a little bit more than I'd like. Obviously, it's a taller car. That's going to happen. The battery pack is still in the bottom, so I think that's all to do with suspension. That's less to do with weight distribution. I like the steering wheel. There are a lot of buttons on it. It's very intimidating, but I think I know what most of them are. So I'm just going to see what it does at 95. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good response. That's good speed and everything. Yeah, I'm very happy with that. That's definitely not bad.
So the first thing I noticed was this low grumbling noise when I was accelerating.
I didn't hear anything.
That's because it's on the inside of the car.
Oh, right. I started on the outside filming you.
And so it's an option. You can turn it on or off, which is nice because...
Ford had a million options, by the way.
What do you mean?
There were so many different pages of menus of things you could turn on and off and switch.
It's true. The UI was very...
option heavy.
Detailed.
Yeah.
Let's go with that. We'll talk about the UI later. So yeah, there's 3 different driving modes, and you can turn on or off the driving sound for all 3 of them independently.
Oh, that's cool.
So for Unbridled Mode, when I was driving it, which is the fast mode.
Yeah, so all the modes are named after like horse-related things. Unbridled is the equivalent of what would be like ludicrous or insane with a Tesla. Mm-hmm. Then there's Engage, which would be the equivalent of like sport mode in a Tesla. And then there is Whisper.
So Engage is a horse term? I get horse whisperer.
Yeah.
And Unbridled.
I thought it was Engage from Star Trek, like engage. But it's not.
Well, it could be if you want it.
It's how you engage your horse.
So anyway, the pumped in sound only applies when you're accelerating. So it's not like at a stoplight it's going to be going like blah, 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 which I appreciate. But to me, the tone wasn't that exciting. It just sort of sounded like grrr. It didn't dynamically like increase in pitch or anything like that. So, because like the exciting part, I think, for people who like gas engines is the like all that kind of sound. That's the exciting part. Obviously, an electric powertrain, you're not shifting gears or anything. So they just kind of put in like a grumble. I think that was just to make sure that you knew that the car was doing something.
Right.
But you could shut it off. In my opinion, with it off, the car felt faster, which is a little
There's less
sad.
energy going into the sound.
And I know that it's a very subjective thing. So if you like car noise, maybe you would like the sound. I just feel like it wasn't exciting enough if you really like car noise.
I didn't like the unbridled mode. It was a little bit too jerky for me. I settled on engage, which would be the equivalent of sport. I also thought it was nice that they have whisper mode in case you're driving around some passengers, just like in a Tesla where they don't really want to feel that jerkiness. And so it's like a chill, relaxed mode. But what is cool about this is if you do floor the pedal, you do get all of that acceleration back, which is nice if you're trying to get through a scary intersection, but you happen to be in whisper mode.
Right, because in a Tesla, when you're in chill mode, you can floor it, and essentially the car is not going to give you max power, which is like great if you're a terrible, terrible, terrible driver who might accidentally floor the vehicle, but very bad if it's like, get me out of here.
I actually wish Tesla would add that feature.
Or at least have it be another option. Chill with emergency boost. I think that a lot of people can't handle a Tesla, and so chill is their option to like, I shouldn't be allowed to drive a car.
Well, and I want to discuss that because I think from my feeling of the accelerator pedal, feels like Ford gave it a very similar torque ratio that you get in a gas car. It felt like it would be very normal going from a gas car to a Mach-E. Whereas when you get into a Tesla, there is a little bit of a learning curve as to how that's going to respond.
Yeah, I mean, the one pedal driving was nice, so the regen was pretty good. But yeah, the acceleration was kind of strange. I think that they put the torque at the very start. So going about 0 to 15 miles an hour felt very strong, felt very torquey. Whereas in my Model 3, at about 20 miles an hour, it just feels like you've pulled the lid off the thing and it goes, wow, all the way up to 60.
The Mach-E felt more linear.
It felt a lot more linear. It just sort of felt like it hit one particular acceleration and stayed there for the entire time. But, you know, with a 0 to 60 of 4.8, it's roughly equivalent to the Tesla. I just think that it gets a lot of that 0 to 60 in the first little section of its acceleration, which I think is fine. It's nice for driving around town because you feel very zippy. But then once you get, you know, onto faster roads and stuff like that, it feels pretty normal. Like you're not going to be, I wasn't that impressed going much faster than that.
Okay, so we put the Mach-E through its paces with Ford's version of Autopilot. They call it ProPilot 360. You engage ProPilot with a button on the left of the steering wheel. It's very easy, but here's the thing. There's no audible sounds when you enter ProPilot. There's just a double blue bubble on the binnacle around your car. And it takes a few seconds, up to a few seconds, for the car to enter that mode. So in a Tesla, you go, ding, ding, you're in.
Right.
Or it says, no, I'm not in.
And it'll go, da, 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 and you go, oh, okay, I'm not an autopilot.
Right. With the Mach-E, you say, I want to go into ProPilot, and
no sound,
nothing. So you got to kind of look down at the binnacle to see when the blue appears around your car.
Now, ProPilot 360 did a pretty good job of driving, especially on the highway. You know, it accelerated fine, it braked for cars ahead of me, and it kept me in the lane. And I mean, I think that you liked the response of the ProPilot in that regard.
Yeah, so once you're in ProPilot, it felt like a 60-year-old had taken over the steering wheel. It felt very comforting. The wheel moved very surely and slowly. Whereas in a Tesla, it feels like a 16-year-old has taken over, and it feels a little bit jerkier. I know I'm overdoing it, but it's a nuanced point here. And so what I want to stress is, it's not that the Mach-E is actually a better pilot. It just feels like it's a better pilot. And here's the problem. Because you have no audible warnings about when it can't handle something anymore and it's going to drop you out, I would have my hands on the wheel, but I couldn't tell when I was taking it over and when it was taking over because it felt so smooth.
And this is the weird part here, is that you can take it out of ProPilot without touching any buttons or anything. You just take the wheel, do whatever you want with it, and then if it's happily centered in a lane, it might engage ProPilot back again. It won't make any noise or anything like that. It won't let you know that you went out of ProPilot or anything like that. No noise. On the binnacle, it will show, essentially the bubbles will disappear. There'll be 2 green lines, maybe a red line if you're going over the thing. But the steering wheel, you do have to pull the steering wheel a little bit. It's not the same amount of torque that you need to pull a Tesla out of Autopilot, and there's no cliff. Let me explain that. So when you're in Autopilot, you can pull the wheel like, I would say, 1/4 of a degree in either direction, depending on your steering setup. And then it feels like someone else is holding the wheel. And then you can pull it, and it goes chunk. And then it goes, and then you're out of Autopilot. And it just told you that you went out of Autopilot. With ProPilot 360, the wheel just
keeps going.
Oh, I'm just
Right.
oh dear. And we did this time after time after time. And I know what you're saying. You're like, but Jesse, you were pulling the car in the wrong direction. I want to point out, if a person is texting while driving, which you shouldn't do,
Or just doing some kind of media settings.
right? Or what's that behind me in the rear seat? What do you want, child? And you bump the steering wheel, no sound, and suddenly you're out of ProPilot 360, and the car is just moving in whatever direction. You may as well be in cruise control.
Yeah, and we filmed this.
So like if I'm like I'm driving along, and I'm not paying any attention, can I pull myself off the road? Yeah, I can pull myself off the road, and I'm still in autopilot. So I would get a warning, but I don't want a warning. I want to not die. Okay, so right lane is clear. I'm going to pretend to be someone who's texting on their phone because the car's driving itself. So light pressure on the wheel, just the slightest pressure. I'm drifting into the other lane. I get the vibration. I'm halfway over. Now I'm over. I'm going to try and drift off the highway. I kind of can. I'm going to hit the rumble strips. Now I've taken my hands off the wheel when I shouldn't have. It took it back over. I don't know about this feature. Okay, so I'm driving along, right? I rest my hand on the steering wheel. I'm not paying attention. I have very slight pressure. And I drive just straight off the highway. So, I can just with light pressure, I'm texting, I'm not paying any attention. Now is when I get the warning. And it's just the steering wheel. The steering wheel vibrates a little bit. And there's no, cliff. So there's no spot where I know that I am pulling it out. Just bye. Oh no, I seem to be leaving my lane. I do not like it. Sam, I am. Look at this. Whoa.
And the thing is, you tried it even with the radio on loud to see if you would get a radio dip, and there was none.
There's nothing like that. Also, another thing, ProPilot makes you put your hands on the wheel every 15 seconds. I think in the future they're going to use the infrared cameras, which are pointed at me. But right now they don't have them turned on. I did some tests where I wasn't looking at the road. I was, but just out of the corner of my eye, to try and see if it would kick me out. So those aren't turned on. We know that those aren't turned on. So it asks you about every 15 seconds, which is about twice as often, I think, as a Tesla, to put your hands on the wheel and give it a little torque test. So exactly the same as Tesla in that regard. But a couple times, I gave it a little torque, and I actually pulled it out of ProPilot 360. So I was driving along, and went, okay, great. And then the car just, I wasn't in ProPilot anymore. Didn't tell me anything. It really freaked me out.
I don't understand why Ford wouldn't just tell you. It makes no sense to not have an audible warning, other than, I know that can be annoying for some people, but here's what I'm worried about.
Yeah.
You get your Ford, you get comfortable with it in the first couple of weeks, and then you're like, okay, I'm comfortable. I've driven to work plenty of times. And then you get overconfident, and then you do something like you just said, where you're messing with the sound dial or whatever, and the car slowly drifts. It's just going to be slow. Right. Just slowly drifts out, and you're in another lane.
Now, there's one notification that you are drifting over a lane, and it's a completely different system from ProPilot, which is that the wheel will jitter. It'll rumble when you're about a quarter to a halfway over a lane line, which is good if your hands are on the wheel. But again, like I said, when you do the 15-second check and maybe you take your hands off the wheel for a second, that rumble is going to nothing.
Right. And that happened to me. I had it in ProPilot. Mm-hmm. We were going around a pretty sharp right turn, and I had my hands on the wheel, and it's not going to make the turn. I'm having a nice, comfortable experience driving, but we're now going into another lane.
Right.
And I had to take over before the rumble happened, but it didn't tell me that it was having a problem. I just had to notice it had a problem.
And so to me, I know that there's a flip side to this. I know that driving in Tesla Autopilot can be a little bit nerve-wracking sometimes, because you put the car in autopilot and sometimes it'll be like, hey, I want to be over one more foot in the lane because you weren't perfectly centered. And it'll just do that. And you're like, right. Whoa, slow down.
Right.
Then also when you pull it out of autopilot, because sometimes you're like, oh, I just want to scooch over to the left a little bit. And then you go clunk and it goes doo-doom and you're like, oh, okay, I'm driving. I personally would prefer that, as opposed to not knowing whether the car was in or not. I know that some people get flustered. They go oh my gosh, the car, I don't like autopilot anymore. I don't ever want to use it again. To me, I would rather have my self-preservation instincts kick in because I am in a car that's traveling very fast.
I actually liked how Ford handled the steering wheel. I just wish they had the audible warnings. If they had that, I think I'd actually prefer Ford's way of handling the steering wheel.
I think that could be good. Yeah, if it would just, ba-boom, ba-boom. Simple as that. Or, whatever they want to do. Like,
right.
You are now leaving Ford ProPilot.
All right, let's go on to the next big section here, and this is charging. And for me, major points are lost for the Mach-E in the charging and the range section of this.
The Mach-E has 150 kilowatts of charging, which is equivalent to a 2018 Tesla. Not bad, but there is a problem.
We went to an Electrify America fast charger, and Andrew was nice enough to give us the car with 50% battery so we could get there with a low state of charge. Problem number one is that the nav stops telling you where to go about 500 feet before you get to the charger. So, it's like approaching charger. And then the screen, then some text appears over the screen and you're like, whoa, 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 I need to know where the charger is.
And we were about 500 feet away. We were in a very busy parking lot and it was hectic because not only did the navigation go away, a big screen came down with a bunch of text. It was like, oh, would you like, I couldn't read it because I was like, where do I go? Now, luckily, we figured out where it was and we were able to get there. But if it was like behind a building or something else like that, there would be no way. We would just have to drive around and figure out where it was.
Yeah, I mean, and this is like Tesla circa, 2014 or something. They didn't have all the chargers perfectly mapped, but then quickly they did. So basically that dot is exactly where the chargers are.
And it would help you drive through a parking lot to get there, which is weird because the navigation in the Mach-E did navigate through parking lots. It just stopped once you got within a certain radius as if you knew where it was.
Problem number two is the charge curve.
So we got there, we plugged it in, everything was working great. It got up to a nice, happy, 140 something kilowatts, which was great because we were down at like 30%. I would expect it to get to 150 if we were any lower state of charge. And it was charging great until we hit 80% state of charge. So it's been about 26 minutes. We're at 79% state of charge. We've added 46 kilowatt hours in this last 26 minutes. So on average, we've probably been around 90 kilowatts, which is perfectly respectable. Okay, now hang on a second. So we just hit 80%, and I don't know if you can read that. That says 13 kilowatts. We just jumped from 80 kilowatts down to 13 kilowatts. I want to go in the car and make sure that that's correct. Okay, so we're at 80% state of charge. We have 219 miles of range. The charger has slowed down to 13 kilowatts, which is slow. It was at 80 kilowatts, and it was on average about 90 kilowatts through the whole charge cycle. The fact that it dropped down to 13 kilowatts is kind of strange. I don't know what it is. The charging cable doesn't feel warm or anything. This is still making the awful hum that it's been making the whole time. So I don't think that that's the problem. I think that that's just the charging rate that the car wants to do. Not the end of the world. I have over 200 miles of range in the car right now as we speak. But if I wanted to get to the full range of this car, it would take over an hour of sitting at over 80% state of charge just to get to 100%. In a Tesla, it's slow too, but it's not 12 kilowatts.
So essentially, you get to 220 miles of fast charging while paying, in our case, 32 cents a minute. And then it drops to ridiculously slow charging speeds, and you're still paying per minute. So essentially, the car has 220 miles of range.
And if you're looking for driving long distances on a road trip, this is going to mean that there's either a lot more stops for charging or a lot more time spent sitting at chargers. Either way, it's not good.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2021, and I expected, first of all, faster charging than 150, I'll be honest. Like, 150 is not a bad speed, but it's 2021. I thought we could get 250 kilowatts. And then the second thing is the range. The Mach-E that we drove has 270 miles of range if you fill up the battery. 270 miles of range, again, is what I would have expected back in like 2016 as a good range. Now I would want to have 300 plus.
I think so. I mean, like my car is about 260-ish miles of range. So, I mean, it's definitely a workable range, but I do get supercharging up to whatever speed I want. Granted, the curve does taper off over time, which is weird here as well, because the Ford charged to, I think it was at 79% state of charge, it was charging at about 80 kilowatts. As soon as it hit 80, dropped down to 12. So that's clearly something that Ford might update in the future. At least they should, because there's definitely improvements to be made there.
Yeah, you should be able to squeeze in more than 12 kilowatts at 80% charge. I mean, that's something more like as you approach 95%.
I think what they were trying to do was protect the battery from either overheating or degrading.
I don't think they have enough data on the battery. I think they're being super careful right now. And I mean, that's fine. I get it. You're new to this. You have to be super careful. But that means in the next year or so, as you're going on, road trips, you're probably going to have to stop a lot more often. Now, Ford has what's called Plug Pass, and we tried it and it worked. It's really cool. It's a lot like in a Tesla, which means that instead of getting out of the car and having to fumble with cards and all that, you just get out of the car, plug in, and it starts the handshake. The only problem was the handshake, which is basically the time it takes for the car to talk to the charger and back and forth before the charging starts, took about 60 seconds. In a Tesla, it takes about 10.
Yeah, and then it starts charging immediately. It's not a killer. I think, honestly, being able to just plug in your car and walk away is fantastic. Obviously, you have to make sure that it does complete the handshake, which means you have to loiter around your car for a minute looking dumb.
That's a good point.
And you can check it on the Ford app that it is charging. You have to refresh it and then it'll tell you. But many times, plugged in my car at a supercharger and then just briskly walked away without, worry, because I knew that it was going to start charging.
Now, Ford is relying on Electrify America, EVgo, and others for their charging experience. And this is a different experience than you're going to get with Tesla. So if you're just looking at this map right now, you'd be like, whoa, that looks a lot like the Tesla charging network. They're the same. But they're not.
They're not. So if we overlay the Tesla charging network, you see that you get all of Canada. You see that you get, just small things like the New Jersey coast, for example, and all of, the Chesapeake area. Also all of North Carolina's coast.
Or going down to Mexico or up into Canada.
Right. Or just, North and South Dakota and most of Montana and all of Wyoming. Like, all of those different, and Maine, all the way up into Nova Scotia. Like, you're missing a bunch of different spots. I know that Electrify America is still expanding. They still have some Dieselgate money to spend. The question is it going to continue working after the Dieselgate money runs out?
So let's talk about some particulars here with the charging infrastructure. First is the number of stalls. We went to an Electrify America that had 4 stalls. Right in the same parking lot was Tesla Superchargers, which had 8 stalls. Now, there's a lot more Teslas on the road right now. In fact, there were 4 of them at the Supercharger. There was no other EVs at the Electrify America, but that's about to change. As the number of EVs go up, there's going to be a lot more I-Paces and Ford Mach-E's and Bolts on the road. They're going to take up those EA chargers, and then you're going to pull in and maybe have nowhere to charge.
Or those chargers are going to be broken. We've heard from many people that they're going to be broken. If you've heard us talk about EA before, you know that none of this is new. I just want to talk about it in regards to Ford. They don't have any protection for Ford customers. And you might be saying, from what? Like burglars or attackers? No. I mean, if a Ford owner gets to an Electrify America station and there's no spots, they're all taken up by Bolts and Leafs and, other cars that aren't Fords, you're going to feel kind of crummy. It's like, oh, why didn't Ford do anything to help me? Whereas with the Tesla, we never have that experience. The worst case is a bunch of Teslas are there and you're like, well, level playing field.
Well, and also Tesla has been known to add more chargers at a location or open up more charging stations. Ford, since they're not in charge of that, and they're like, well, that's EA's problem. They're just going to be like, well, wait for EA. Now, our buddy Andrew, he's in New Hampshire, and he's only got a couple charging options, and one of them is down in Massachusetts.
In fact, he only has one charging option in the entire state of New Hampshire, which is a pretty big state. And it's not in the center of the state or anything like that. It's over on the coast.
All right, so in wrapping up here, let's touch on some things. Let's talk about braking.
So I really like the regen. I thought that it was plenty strong. I like me a car with some good regen. I like feeling like I'm getting the energy back. The brake blending was a little funky. So if the regen isn't enough or you just don't trust it and you want to do a little bit faster, a deacceleration, the brakes really kick in. You're like, And for passengers, it's really, I think that you could get used to it, but, Bobby was filming me, and he was getting sick.
I'm getting sick, so that's my take.
Because, every time I touched the brake, it was very strong. I mean, strong braking is not a bad thing, but I think it could have been blended in a little bit nicer.
Everyone talks about how the Ford is better because it has better build quality. What did you think about the build quality?
I don't care about gaps and stuff like that, so I'm not going to comment on any of that. I think I liked a lot of the different aspects of it. I think that it was fine, except for the interior. I thought that there was just too many buttons everywhere. I know that I'm coming from a Model 3, and there's I think maybe 3 buttons in the whole interior of the car, including the horn. But for me, it was just overwhelming, and the UI really sucked. We, Bobby and I were listening to music on our drive back to Andrew's house, and we finally figured out how to connect the Bluetooth, and we were listening to it, and we wanted to change, the bass and the treble settings. So I was like, okay, so we're in the music thing. How do I change? Couldn't figure it out. You have to go into the settings menu of the entire car, which has every single type of thing that you can alter and change about the car. And then you have to scroll through music or the sound system. Great. Then you could change the bass and treble settings. It wasn't where I wanted it. And that, to me, was such an eye-opener because with Tesla, everything is close to the stuff that it needs. It's not that the car has fewer options. It does have slightly fewer options than the Ford, but they're very well structured. A lot of the things that you need are very close at hand. And with the Ford, it's just well, if you want a menu, here it is.
I want to talk about the Nav system. I just thought it was very rudimentary. It felt like it was circa 2012 or something.
Even earlier than that. I think it was 2006 feeling. Now, you can sync it up with your phone to do Android Play. We didn't do that. I know that a lot of people are going to do that. We just wanted to see what the car was like on its own.
There's also that knob on the screen, which I think is not necessary. I think that, first of all, it feels flimsy. Also, I didn't use it ever. Maybe I could have. Maybe it was a faster way to do something, but it's
the volume knob.
Right.
It's the volume knob.
Oh, that's all it was for.
I think that when you have a touchscreen, the people at Ford went, where's the volume knob? People want a volume knob, damn it.
But why put it on the screen?
Because they didn't have anywhere else to put it? I don't know.
Let's talk about another knob I didn't like, which is the shifter knob, and that is down here. And it's not just on the Mach-E. They have it on their other models as well. But first of all, it felt very flimsy. It felt very just oh, I'm in park. Oh, I'm in drive. Yeah. And it's just in a weird place. You don't want to go hunting for this knob when it should be here-ish, not here.
Yeah, and it's not like you're going ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk. There are detents, but it's just click, 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 and then you can keep spinning it.
Right.
So you're oh, I'm in drive. I'm still in drive. Or, and I'm in park. So to get to reverse, a lot of times I was just putting it in park, then, I messed it up. Reverse.
Right. It's easy to go past. Yeah, exactly.
I didn't particularly like it. And, I'm coming from my Model 3 with the stock and also the Nissan Leaf, which has that
weird shifter thing. Yeah.
Weird bulbous kind of shifter. But at least you push it.
It feels like we just haven't settled on something. We used to have, a stick shift.
And that was by necessity.
And it feels like everyone's trying to come up with something. I guess Tesla's coming up with the ultimate, right? With the new system in the refreshed Model S, which is basically going to decide it by itself. So,
right.
Next thing was the hood. First of all, it's a heavy hood. It's physically heavy. But also, it's a hood-heavy car. So when you're in the driver's seat, this isn't a forward cabin kind of design. This is an old-school design, and maybe you like that. But
it's a Mustang, Zach. It's a Mustang.
But here's the thing. I'm so used to the Teslas now and, other cars that are cab forward where you're not seeing the hood. So you're getting to see more of the road. And when you're parking and stuff, it's really nice. Then to go back to a hood-heavy design where it's oh, I got to look past the hood. I didn't like it.
Yeah, I noticed that you could see the hood. And yeah, in my Model 3, you don't really notice it. I think it sticks out pretty much the same distance, but it's sloped downwards, so right. You can really have better awareness around. Again, it's a Mustang.
I hear you.
So, you got to keep that in mind. It has a legacy to think about. That's why they made a crossover.
Now, it's got thinner tires. These are 225s versus the 255s, which are on Teslas. So that's good news for cheapness, right? You're going to spend less on tires. But it means less rubber on the road. And I'm sure they did this to cut down on tire noise and also to cut down on the friction. But that means that, in rain or snow, you're going to have less rubber on the road, which I don't think is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, Teslas do feel like race cars, and a big portion of that is because they have big, huge tires, but they do get expensive. So I don't know, maybe a toss-up, but when you really need it, you'd want it.
So let's talk about the rear seating. This is important for a lot of people, especially if you're going to be pulling families around. I thought it was very comfortable. A lot of leg room. Evie Dave had said that, he's a tall guy. I think he's like 6'4" or something. Yeah. And he said that it felt a little bit scrunched in the back seat. I'm more of a medium-sized person. I felt like it was pretty good size in the back seat. How'd you feel? You're in the middle of us.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I didn't notice my head getting anywhere close to anything in the back seat. And the front seats are really like scooped, so you have a lot more leg room. I thought they did a perfectly good job on that, so no complaints there. I like the look of the frunk. Comes with like a divider, which is
it's smart.
Really smart, actually, because I'm thinking back to all the times where like, let's put a bottle of wine in the frunk. How fun! And then you're like, I don't want this to smash.
Right.
And you have this big frunk, and it could just go whoppa-cha. So you usually want to stuff it with like sweatshirts or something to prevent stuff from moving, and then it's like now you don't have any room. So I do like the divider that they came up with. I think that's really smart. Andrew was talking about how he was going to use it for hiking to put like his muddy shoes into one section.
And speaking of which, they have a drain port,
which is really smart as opposed to like a carpeted interior looking thing on a storage section of the car. So I did really like the frunk. The rear trunk looked great. It had an undersection.
But you did discover one thing about the rear.
So one of the things that I just figured out is once you open the door here, okay, great. Now you have your seats. When you fold the seats flat, you get the seat belt out of the way. That's great. You get a nice flat seat, plenty of storage space. I'm very happy with that. So if you can see back here, this is a little metal thing, which is what holds the door, fits into this little groove right here. The problem is you folded down the seats quite nicely. Now you want to fold the seats back up, and now your seat belt is trapped in the seat. So to fix it, you have to fold the seat back down, get your seat belt out first, then hook it over. You can actually see, you can see that they intended to keep it stayed right here, but when you fold it down, you don't want to have this seatbelt flopping around. So your first inclination is going to be to get it out of the way. And what that's going to do is it's going to trap your seatbelt.
So if you're looking for like an overall rating of this car, I kind of think of the Ford Mach-E as that private school, high school kid who had his father, the big CEO of a consulting firm, help him on a multi-week research paper, right? So you get this assignment, and the kid just waited weeks and weeks to start it. And then the last day is like, oh, Dad, I got this research paper. And he's like, don't worry, son, I'll help you. And his dad pretty much wrote it all for him. The kid just had to sign it. He handed it in. It wasn't a very good paper. He gets a 70 on it. That's the Mach-E for me. Ford worked with Borg Warner. They worked with LG, who basically made the powertrain of this car. And so that's fine. I have nothing against that, except that this car would have been awesome in 2016. It would have been right on par with what Tesla was putting out, I think. But now, fast forward 4 or 5 years later, in 2021, it doesn't feel like it's with the rest of the pack. Tesla, on the other hand, is that kid who worked really hard on the paper for the whole time, got no help from anyone, doesn't even speak English as a first language, handed it in, got an A+. That is Tesla. And I think the biggest takeaway I have with this car is that if you're a Ford fan and you basically don't know much about EVs, but you've been waiting for this car and you get it, you're probably going to be very happy with it. The problem is when you go to compare it to other EVs, you won't know what you're comparing it to because you haven't driven other EVs. And it's a lot like what happened to a lot of Chevy Bolt owners. They got their cars, they thought they now understood EVs, but without comparing them to a Tesla, you don't get the whole charging experience. And so I urge you, if you're thinking about getting this car, go drive your friend's Tesla for a couple days, go on a long trip, charge it a few times, and get used to what that experience is. Then go try a Ford Mach-E and do the same thing. Don't do a 20-minute test drive. Go for a 1-day test drive or 2-day test drive where you get to actually test out the charging, because it's a comparison I don't even know how to give you an example of. I guess one example would be HD TV. As HD TVs were coming out, a lot of people are like, I don't need one of those. I got a TV. I can see the game just fine. And yeah, you could. And if you were trying to explain to someone with a regular old TV how much better an HD TV was, what would you say? Like, well, it's better.
Yeah. You can see more detail. It's like, well, I know that's the whole point, but I'm fine.
I can still see all the players and everything.
And then you get it and you can't go back.
Exactly. Or with a smartphone. You one day you got your first smartphone, right? And you're telling all your friends and family about how awesome it was. And you're like, I can do banking on this. And they're like, I can go to a bank too. I can order food on it. And they're like, I got a phone. I can just call them up. And you're like, you don't understand. You don't understand it until you have it. And then you're like, oh my gosh, how did I live without this?
The thing to me, the weirdest part about this whole thing is if Ford came out and they were like, here's our Ford Electromobile. And they came out with some, marketing name or whatever. And it was just centered around electric and it looked electric and it was electric. That would be one thing. They didn't do that. They said, this is our Mustang Mach-E. And so immediately, they knew what they were doing, obviously. They were going to capture all the Mustang fans because there's plenty of people who love Mustangs. And, rightly so. It has this long heritage of beautiful cars. Okay. It's a complete departure from a Mustang. I mean, it has some stylings of a Mustang, but it's a crossover SUV,
right? Which
no Mustang has ever been,
right?
So that's the first ding in my, opinion. Why do that? Why not just take the powertrain, put it into a Ford body? Just do that, and just for marketing purposes, in my opinion.
They got so much more attention from the press, from fans, because of the name. If they hadn't, it would have been a flop. It would have been okay. Yeah. Because I just want to bring back up the Model Y right here. For $58,000, you're now in the close range of getting a performance Model Y.
Right, and you could get an even cheaper long-range Model Y, which is no slouch either.
Right. And you get so many more benefits, which maybe on a quick screenshot, you can't see them. But when it comes to range, when it comes to charging, when it comes to the over-the-air updates, like when it comes to the UI, when all this stuff, which is very hard for us to explain to you without experiencing it, it's just a no-brainer. So to me, when I say like the Ford is a 7 out of 10, the Tesla's a 10 out of 10. Like, and so I agree with you. Giving it the Mustang name is pretty much the only reason we're even talking about it right now.
And I think it's going to be a double-edged sword. I think that a lot of Mustang, fans have, first of all, been turned away by this crossover SUV. And the Ford fans who are going to get into it are either going to not be impressed or they will be impressed by the electric drivetrain, but they won't fully understand what electric is, go, oh, that's good, and go back to their gas cars. Right. And my concern is that is exactly what Ford wants them to do.
Yes. I mean, this does not make a compelling case for an EV. It's an okay case. And again, 5 years ago, it was a pretty good case.
If you want an EV,
right?
If you're like, I want an EV and I'll do whatever I need to do to make it work, it's a perfectly fine EV. I don't want to, say. But if you're like on the fence and you're like, oh, I don't know about this electric stuff, let me try out this, I think you're going to go, yeah, I think I'm fine with my gas.
Yeah,
car,
I'll wait. And I think you're exactly right. First of all, they can't make them fast enough, and also they don't want to kill the rest of their brand. This is the Osborne effect in real life. So there you have it, folks. There's our take on the Ford Mach-E. I want to give a super shout out to Andrew for letting us drive this car, because otherwise we would have had no actual experience with the car.
Yeah.
Other than sitting in it at the LA Auto Show.
So thank you so much, Andrew. And thank you so much for watching. We really hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you next week.
Now you know.